love, my beloved. How powerful is your name in all the earth. You, whose glory is sung in heaven by the angels and saints, who with the innocence and spontaneity of a child confound those who are mighty and proud. You comfort the unloving and fearful. When I look up at the heavens, at the work of love's creation, at the infinite variety of your plan, what is woman that you rejoice in her, and man that you delight in him? You have made us in your image. You fill us with your love. You have made us co-creators of the earth, guardians of the planet, to care for all your creatures, to tend to the land, the sea, and the air we breathe. All that you have made, you have placed in our hands. O love, my beloved, how powerful is your name in all the earth. May these words be to us our light and our life. We have a special gift this morning in honor of Father's Day. Two people offering some reflections on Father's Day from their own lives. I thank both Deborah and Jim for saying yes to this moment and sharing with us their story.
Good morning. I begin with exegesis, not of scripture, but of one old German word, Schmetterman. It means a person who makes things of refined metal. Hello, this is Deborah Ann Schmetterman speaking. I'm told that as a very young child, I would say those words clearly as a bell when I answered the phone. I had to. I was the daughter of Colonel Keith Schmetterman. It was 1959. The Cold War was on, and he was a senior commanding officer of the American military post in Bamberg, Germany, near the border between East and West Germany. A caller to our house had to know right away if he had reached our home. Now, this was not my father's first tour of duty in Europe. Just over 70 years ago, on D-Day +1, he landed on Omaha Beach in Normandy. His combat duty included the Battle of the Bulge. He was sent to recover American prisoners of war at Buchenwald and discover the concentration camp of Jewish prisoners. In the early 1950s, he commanded an infantry battalion in Korea. So it was especially sweet for my father to be stationed at the Pentagon in the Virginia suburbs of Washington, D.C. when I was in elementary school. For the first time, he made a civilian home for his wife and two daughters. On the weekends and in the evenings, he was daddy to me. Ours was a white brick house with pink shutters, a pink kitchen, a pink bathroom with wallpaper depicting a cartoon poodle preparing for a date. I picked that out. And a corner bedroom for my sister and me that my father painted cotton candy pink. He grew 3 kinds of rose bushes, 1 kind for each of us. He built a rock garden in the back where my Barbie dolls, not my Ken dolls, my Barbie dolls, acted out daring escapades, reflecting my early plans to be a spy when I grew up. On Friday evenings, we went to dinner dances at the Army-Navy Country Club. And he danced with all of us, my mother, my sister, and me. In my case, he danced. I stood on his feet, which worked fine because he was 6'2" and ran rod straight. On Sunday after church, we ate lunch at Evans Farm Inn and drove around the Virginia countryside in our big black Buick sedan. When I was a child, it did not occur to me to wonder how a soldier from Omaha Beach, the Battle of the Bulge, Buchenwald, and Korea raised little girls. But I've since pieced a few things together. My mother told me that my father woke several times a night to check his troops. That is, my sister and me. When he tucked me in, I would, in my sleep, routinely say, "Thank you, Daddy." I often woke in the night with a story in my head, and I would sneak into the living room where I kept a pad of paper and a pencil. Every time I would find him there, reading. He did not ask me what I was writing. I did not ask him what he was reading, but it was always the Bible. When I was 12, the race riots following Martin Luther King Jr.'s death brought the National Guard to patrol Washington, D.C. If I recall correctly, my father drove my sister and me to the outer edges of the area so we could see the scene for ourselves. He talked to us of vigilance. Vigilance for our own safety, that we never place ourselves in harm's way. But also vigilance for our community and our country, that we each treat all people fairly and promote fairness in whatever ways we could to keep such a dreadful scene from repeating on our country's own shores. A dozen years later, when I was in my mid-20s, I moved to Minnesota with my new husband. I called to establish phone service. I told the phone company employee that we would need 2 listings in the phone book, one for my husband, Craig Bauer, one for me, given our different last names. She asked, meaning Craig, "How could you do that to him?" Before I replied, I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, smiled, and heard a little voice in my head say, "Hello, this is Deborah Ann Schmedeman speaking."
Good morning. I have to admit there's a part of me that's still a bit amazed that I can be standing here today talking about my reflections on fatherhood. Like many gay men, part of my struggle to come to terms with who I was involved grieving the knowledge that I probably wouldn't be able to be a father. Coming of age as I did in the 1980s, I never really imagined a day when I could be unashamedly out, a parent, soon to be married, and standing as a member of a church congregation able to share my story. But God does work in mysterious ways, and I'm very thankful for that. About 3 months into our relationship, Mike and I began to have periodic conversations about kids. These usually started something like, what if, maybe, someday. It took about 6 years for us to get serious to the point where we felt we were actually able and ready to pursue adoption. You see, we never really expected that anyone would trust us with kids. But it was a sentiment that was reinforced by the sometimes not so subtle feedback of the various adoption agencies we met with. And when you grow up being told you're a deviant, you really start to believe it. Then one morning on accident, after a string of false starts, we happened to see this TV ad for an agency in Portland, Oregon that took a different approach to adoption. A quick phone call got us connected, and I can't tell you what a difference their positive attitude made for us. From that point forward, we worked with people who started sentences about our pending parenthood with when, not if. Cole came to us quite quickly, as these things go. About 3 months from the time we finished the paperwork, we got a phone call that started with, "You've been picked by a birth mother who will probably deliver tonight." We were on our way to the airport to go back to Ohio, where Mike's mom was going to get married to his stepdad the next day. So we pulled to the side of the road and made the quick and easy decision to become parents. And I have to tell you that despite reading volumes of books, having endless discussions, and enduring way too many seminars. We were, in the end, just two clueless men with no sense at all about what we were about to encounter. We really just needed to trust our gut and get started with our family. The next 24 hours were an incredible rush that I will remember as long as I live. As we continued to drive to the hospital in Seattle, we suddenly remembered that we had agreed not to put a nursery together in advance. You see, we didn't want to be daily passing a room that reminded us of something that we didn't have and might never be. So panicked, we quickly pulled into the nearest Babies R Us and began this frantic rush through the aisles. Each of us on a cell phone with our moms and sisters getting advice on what we might need. Standing at the cash register with our mountain of supplies, I remember the look on the cashier's face as she asked us when the baby was due, and I said, sometime tonight. She quickly composed herself and said, I'm sure you'll be just fine. But she didn't sound so confident. We didn't actually become parents that night, however. Cole showed us the first glimpse of his independence by waiting until late the next afternoon to actually enter this world. The sleepless night we endured was good practice for the next 13 years. After waiting for what seemed like forever, the birth process itself was pretty quick. The doctor turned and handed the baby to me and gave Mike the scissors to cut the cord. I was speechless. All I could do, and I'm going to cry now thinking about it, was look at this amazing little boy in my arms, cry, and in my head say over and over, I love you. I will never, ever forget that moment. Holding him, loving him, and experiencing both total fear and complete calm at the same time. The experience of Grant coming into our family was much the same. We were home on a Friday night. By this time, we'd lived in Minneapolis. And we got a call saying, you've been picked by a birth mother who will probably give birth tonight. We had about 2 hours to catch a flight from Minneapolis to Medford, Oregon. And we arrived just barely before Grant was born. Again, the memory of the first time I held him is seared into my brain, with the same overwhelming crush of emotions and love. As we stood there, surrounded by the birth mother's family and friends, 4-year-old Cole looked at the nurse and asked if it was a boy. When the nurse replied yes, Cole said, that's good, because you have to be a boy to live in our house. The lessons we learned from the creation of our family have played out over and over again throughout the years. First, despite our best efforts to prepare, it's amazing how often you have to just wing it. The nurses at Swedish Hospital in Seattle really didn't know what to make of us. They gave us endless lectures on childcare, and one particular nurse made such a point of reminding us to feed the baby every 4 hours that when we got home, we actually set the alarm to wake Cole up every 4 hours on the dot to feed him. My mom arrived the next day and quickly put a stop to that. But as you can see, it looks like Cole made it pretty much unscathed. Second, at the end of the day, you really realize that you can do it, and usually much better than you expected. The first 4 weeks of Cole's life, I read the baby book religiously every day, desperate not to miss an important detail. Then somewhere around month 6, I found the book shoved under the couch, dusty and dog-eared, forever marked on week 4. For better or worse, I didn't even realize that it was gone. Third, the best things happen when you least expect them. The day we learned Grant was coming to us was probably the one day in a year I hadn't thought about our pending second quest for adoption. We had to scramble through what felt like unbeatable odds to make flights and get across the country. And of course, the day after Grant was born, the Minnesota government shut down, delaying our return home for about a week. It was meant to be, however, and it was a good reminder of the power in trusting God to help us figure things out. And finally, and most important, I think the best lesson is don't miss the little moments. I had one yesterday as I watched the boys playing. These brief times in life when everything seems just right and perfect are a great gift from God to us all. Psalm 8, I think, is unusual in that it encourages us to thank God for all that we have, rather than some of the previous Psalms that contain petitions for relief. We have great opportunities to come to the Lord in thanks and recognition for all that He's bestowed upon us. I, for one, have an incredible amount to be thankful for. On this Father's Day, I give thanks for all the blessings the Lord has given me. Thank you, Cole and Grant, for letting me be a father. Thanks, Mike, for coming along this journey with me. And thanks, God, for leading us along the way.